Ooh, spooky, fear-mongering. Oh, Lego, why do you have to entertain the rumors? This isn't even really a rumor, honestly. I feel like it's just a talking point that has gotten so big over the past few hours here that we have to make a video about it. So, we're talking about the Philadelphia Flyers, and we're talking about the Vancouver Canucks. And, oddly enough, we're also talking about Tocchet, because with the Philadelphia Flyers news today of John Tortorella getting fired, the floodgates seem to have opened up for fans and analysts and media all over to start talking about the Vancouver Canucks and their coaching situation and whether or not one Rick Tocchet is next in line to coach Philly. A lot of this started in the local beat, but it also started in Pittsburgh, where Josh Yohei tweeted this earlier in the morning. I have zero doubt that Rick Tocchet is atop the Flyers' wish list. It would definitely be in the best interest of Penguins fans if GMJR were to keep him in Vancouver for a while longer. And here's the thing. The idea of Philadelphia getting rid of Tortorella and bringing in Rick Tocchet, stylistically, I can understand the evolution from Torts to Tock. They're kind of similar stylistically in the way that they like to run their team. Torts is a lot older than Rick Tocchet is, but I feel like the emphasis that both of these guys put on defensive coverage and structure and playing a certain way, and in Torts' case it's blocking shots, being hard to play against, there are quite a few similarities in their style. And I think for a lot of Canucks fans who may have remembered the way John Tortorella coached the Sedins back in 2014, that was seen as a really big misstep because he had the Sedins split up on separate lines, and he had the Sedins penalty killing and having them focus on blocking shots instead of just getting points. And so I'm not saying that Rick Tocchet is like Sedins splitting Tortorella level, but Rick Tocchet definitely does have that certain style. And we see guys that excel in the way that he coaches the teams. JT Miller, with the pace that he plays at, awesome last year, not great this year. Connor Garland, Dakota Joshua, Kiefer Sherwood, guys who play with pace, guys who play with physicality, they all excel under Rick Tocchet's system. More skilled guys like Elias Pettersson and Andrei Kuzmenko, these guys didn't have great times under Rick Tocchet. Elias Pettersson, though, was highly productive for a good sample. It's just this season he kind of fell off. Andrei Kuzmenko definitely was in the doghouse for most of his time, though, under Tocchet, so that's not really fortunate there. But if you think about it, both of these coaches have their similarities. And for Rick Tocchet, he was once a Philadelphia Flyer. In fact, he was longest tenured as a Philadelphia Flyer from 1984 to 1991-1992. That is when he played for Philly before heading over to Pittsburgh, and then he went over to LA, Boston, Washington, Phoenix, and Philadelphia again at the end of his career. So 2 separate stints in the Philadelphia Flyers organization as a player. Tocchet maxed out getting 96 points for the Flyers in 1990. He was a fantastic player. He played rough, he played tough, he could score points, and then he played in Pittsburgh and had a 100-point season. So Rick Tocchet, as a Stanley Cup champion, certainly does have the resume as both an NHL point producer and a tough guy. He had multiple 100-plus penalty minute seasons and 100-point seasons. So he was really good at all these things. If you wanted to say there's a natural connection to Philadelphia, I would understand why. And so we talk about Philadelphia now and their coaching situation opening up with the departure of John Tortorella. And this growing sentiment then says that Philadelphia would like to have their coaching situation replaced by Rick Tocchet. But here's the thing. You just don't know what the future holds for Vancouver and Rick Tocchet right now. There was a bit by Rick Dhaliwal earlier this morning that said that Tocchet has not committed or decommitted from Vancouver for next year. It's not like there have been any decisions made. It's not like Philadelphia is immediately going to get Tocchet, and that's already set in stone. It's just kind of loose for now. Things can change over the next few days. The Vancouver Canucks can decide to let Rick Tocchet go. They can give him the opportunity to go elsewhere. But for now, nothing is really set in stone, which I think is maybe the biggest update that we need, because I see a lot of people talking on social media, oh, Torts is out in Philly, that means Tocchet is going over there. That means Tocchet's out in Vancouver. Tocchet's going to leave Vancouver and go over to Philadelphia. But unfortunately, we just don't really know at this point. Now, why Canucks fans would want to see Rick Tocchet out, that's different. That's an entirely other discussion with a variety of reasons, because ultimately, Rick Tocchet and the way he has coached this team has been under such a microscope and under a lot of scrutiny this season that you kind of have to just wonder, where is it going to go? Are the Canucks exhibiting the results that Allvin and Rutherford are preferring? No, absolutely not. They're not playing as well as management and ownership wants. But do they think it's the coach's fault? Do they think it's a staff issue, or is it a personnel issue? Is it the players on the ice not showing off as well as they can or should be, or is it the coach not getting the most out of the players? I do think that it boils down to a little bit of both, although maybe not to the same extreme that some posters on social media, like on Twitter, for example. I mean, I think it was Rick Dhaliwal as well who said something similar to this, but there are some guys on Twitter whose full-time jobs it is to just absolutely hate on everything Rick Tocchet does. It's kind of interesting to see that dynamic, but for Tocchet, he is the reigning coach of the year. He is a guy who hasn't really exhibited much success coaching anywhere else, like in Arizona, for example. You can say he was a part of the Pittsburgh teams, but that was in an assistant coach capacity, so it's not necessarily the same as a head coach. He was only an Arizona guy, and the Coyotes weren't really all too great. And you can debate whether or not some of the same problems the Vancouver Canucks are having with their lack of offense and their lack of on-the-rush offense were similar to what they had in Arizona. You could either debate me or tell me in the comments if it's legitimately like that, if that's actually the case. I know some of y'all probably will. But at the end of the day, whether or not the fans see it the same way the management sees it is a completely other discussion. Whether or not the Vancouver Canucks management believes in their guy, because we've seen Rutherford and Allvin be very faithful to the people they've had in their organizations in years prior. Whether or not that's the case, we don't really know. So all we got to do is sit here and watch as the summer comes and goes, as Rick Tocchet either stays or goes in Vancouver, and whether or not he decides to head over to Philadelphia to take a look at his stint number 3 with the Flyers. 2 stints as a player, 1 stint as a coach. I mean, why not retire that guy's number already? I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but really, there is no other team in the National Hockey League other than, I guess, the Pittsburgh Penguins, in which he won the Stanley Cup with, that he seems to have more of a connection with. But it is kind of interesting as well how Josh Yohei says on Twitter, yeah, Pens fans, we probably want to see Tocchet stay in the West. We don't want to see Philadelphia get Tocchet because the team is going to get better with him. Saravalli had a few hits over the past few weeks on Halford and Bruff as well, where he keeps on talking up a storm on Rick Tocchet's reputation. I mean, whether or not that's true or not, that's besides the point. I feel like Canucks fans and just the general fickleness with this fan base in how Rick Tocchet is perceived varies so differently from how the industry apparently views Rick Tocchet internally. How apparently he's a top 5 coach in the NHL and how people really like to have him on their teams and stuff. And if Vancouver got rid of him, there'd be so many teams lining up out the door to potentially fire the coaches they have themselves in order to hire Tocchet. Apparently they really like this guy, but Canucks fans, totally different story. It's like 50-50 down the middle. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below, whether or not you think Rick Tocchet is going to leave to Philadelphia. That's a very simple question, very simple conclusion, yes or no. Do you think it's going to happen, though? Because Philadelphia, with their coaching change today of Tortorella out, potentially, is Tocchet the guy to come back in here? Let me know in the comment section what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.